So let's talk about driving a manual transmission. A lot of people just get thrown into it. They get, here you go, here's the keys, get in here. Now do all these things at once. And they're expected to put it in gear correctly, control RPM with their foot, actuate the clutch the right amount, right? They're asked to do all those things at once. Meanwhile, also worrying about where the car is going, where you are, if you're gonna stall it, and all that kind of stuff. And so, I mean, you can learn to drive manual that way, but you know what? It's painful. And a lot of mistakes happen. You can damage a car, you can spend too much time revving it up and slipping the clutch really bad, and all kinds of stuff. Just like if I was, say, learn to go snowboarding, and I put the snowboard on and I go to the top of the mountain, strap it on, and just try and get down. Yeah, I can learn that way, but chances are high I'm gonna fall down a lot, and I could break a wrist or something. So in a snowboarding situation, if I wanna teach someone to snowboard, what I do is I tell them, put the snowboard on in your living room on carpet, and then balance on an edge for a while. Balance on your toe side edge, get the feel for that. Balance on the heel side edge, get a feel for that. And then practice transitioning between those two edges for like an hour. Get to where your balance is really good. Then do little hops and try and hop and land on edges and that kind of stuff. If you can do that before you even hit the mountain, you will have a way better experience. You will fall less, you will carve better, right? And that's all about training your feet to do what you're trying to do. And so in this case, it's no different. Manual transmission, I want to train my feet. So the right foot, right? The first thing you do is have your person who's learning, or yourself, learn to control the throttle. Take the throttle 1500 RPM, take the throttle 2000 RPM, you know, and then 2500 RPM. Whoops, I blew right through it. But, you know, practice that and then get an idea for how the engine responds to inputs. Because if you just get in the car and push your throttle down as if you're driving an automatic, right, it's gonna keep climbing. And that's not how you do manual. You gotta give it a little bit of throttle to get to a friction point, get the car moving, and then you gotta modulate the throttle to get the required acceleration, you know, in the car. So have the person go from 1500 to 2000, back to 1500, back to 1000, and, you know, and practice throttle control. And then do it with the AC compressor on or off. I just turned it off just now, and now it's gonna behave differently. Look at that, right, to 2000. That was the same amount of throttle it took to get 1500 before with the compressor on. So, you know, do things like that so the person can get a feel for the throttle control, because you want them to be able to change RPMs, you know, and have minute control over the throttle, because that's what you need if you're gonna take off from a stop well. So practice that for a while, because what you're gonna see is the person's gonna give it throttle and it's gonna rev, and you're gonna go, whoops, you know, then they're gonna do one of these numbers and whatever. Now, if it's a drive-by-wire car, this is even harder, because the drive-by-wire programming is really odd. So you'll try and get $2 grand, and all of a sudden the car will do this, and then you'll let off some and it'll look like that, and you'll try and get the throttle again and go up to here, right? That'll happen a lot with drive-by-wire cars. This drive-by-cable and drive-by-cable cars are a little bit easier to control in that regard. The other one is your clutch foot, right? Clutch foot's really important. That's on the left for those that don't know, right? You want them to first pump it a few times and get a feel for it, and just really get an idea of how to plant a heel, do a rotation like this, and then also do a lifted heel push, so they get a feel for how the clutch pedal feels. Now, I said feel a lot. Now, the next trick though is, next exercise is you gotta put it in gear, and then with no throttle input at all, just have them bump the clutch out until the RPM start to drop, and they feel the car start to move forward, like right there. And then release it, push it back in again, right? Let it out until they feel the friction, and then push it back in again. So we're just feeling where that friction zone is. And my e-brake's on, but if they do it well enough, you can get the car rolling pretty well without any application of throttle. And they might stall it, you know, who knows, but that's fine. Now, the cool thing about this is that you're learning where the friction point is without applying power. And when you do that, you're not gonna smoke the clutch a bunch, right? Yes, you're gonna wear it a tiny bit, but since you're not using horsepower from the engine, you're only getting idle horsepower and then the residual momentum left in the flywheel to do this to the car. So if it stalls, if you do this 50 times, you're not gonna burn the clutch up, all right? So this is important to do, because it gets the person the idea of where that friction point is. You get to that, to where it goes down some more and then stop. So you want the person to get a feel for that. This does two things. One, this gets or breaks the idea that once they start letting the clutch out, they have to keep letting the clutch out. That's a very common misconception when people first start driving a stick. They start letting the clutch out and they think, oh, I just got to keep going with it. Well, that's not the case. With this helps break that, because it teaches them to push it back in when the engine is starting to stutter or die, right? And that's always a good thing to do. Not necessarily give it more, it might not be, giving it more throttle might not be the answer in the case of it may already be bogged out too much. They may give it too much throttle already and you're going up a steep hill, right? It could be the e-brakes on, they don't realize it, right? So just giving more throttle isn't always the answer if the RPMs are dropping when you're letting the clutch out. So this helps break the habit, or the mindset that you have to continue letting the clutch out. It also gets them to learn the friction point, and they can do this over and over again and practice it until they can get to where they can reach the friction point fast. Initially, they may stall it, you know, too hard like that. Or they might go too slow and you're sitting there waiting, like, are you ever gonna find the friction point, you know, in this car? And then it's forever, you're waiting and waiting and waiting and waiting. What you wanna do is you wanna get to where they get a feel for it and they're able to bring the clutch to the friction point, right? You want to practice, they know where that's at, bam, I can bring it quickly, bring it there. Then ready, go. And you can find the friction point really fast, right? And so now you're training the clutch foot. So now when the person tries to move the car or go for a drive, they're not completely lost. They're not trying to balance the engine RPM and the clutch for the first time, right? So do those two techniques, practice with the clutch, practice with throttle control, and then say, all right, let's hit the road, let's give it a shot. Obviously parking lots are great and that kind of stuff. Then you can say, all right, now bring the RPM to 1500, they can bring it up, and let the clutch out from the friction point on, and then they can practice driving and taking off from a stop. You've already trained their feet to have way more control than they had otherwise, right? So it's really important, I think, if you want to teach someone to drive a clutch without damaging the car, damaging the clutch, or damaging their ego too much, to do these exercises just to train the feet, train the gas pedal, train the clutch. And hey, if they're having a hard time with it, don't even hit the road the first day. Maybe say, you know what, sleep on it. And because that goes a long way. A lot of that stuff settles into your brain and lets you learn, or allows you to learn while you're sleeping. They say sleep on it, right? That's a real thing. Then the next day, test the clutch again, test the throttle control again, and see how that is. And then if you say, hey, you know what, they're better, they're hitting those RPM settings quickly, they're finding that friction point quickly, then hit the road, man. Like, if you got a girlfriend or a wife, or, you know, a little brother, or whoever you're trying to teach, don't smash their ego the first day and worry about your car by trying to hit the road and go bucking in, and, you know, installing and dealing with all that, flooding the car out. Who knows, right? That's hard on the person, it's hard on the car. Do these little exercises, get the throttle control, get the clutch control first, and then hit the road, and then give it a shot. And I guarantee you that the person will be very thankful, because you're gonna spend less time going, oh my God, watch out, you know, that's too much, that's too little, because that unnerves everybody. It's low stress. You're not trying to move a 3,000 or 4,000 pound vehicle doing this. It's super easy. You can do it sitting still, right? It does almost no damage to the car, hardly anywhere. You can do this for quite a while, and the person will become a better driver. And the first time hit the road, they'll feel more confident with it. Their feet are better trained, and it's a good way to go. So I hope that helps. Shoot, I know that it helps anyone that I've helped. Man, I say help and feel a lot, don't I? I know that it's helped anyone that I've taught to drive a manual to do it that way. And so I just wanted to share that with you guys. Thanks.